Thank you very much, Ngozi. I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone who's watching us. Good morning, good evening, good night. My name is Edith Kimani. I'm joining you from Nairobi. That's a green city in the sun, the capital of Kenya. Also, my cat in the background, that's Fomo. So if you hear a bell or anything of that sort, that's the cat in the background. So as Ngozi said, it's a party up in here. We're launching the 77% Instagram page. And if you have no clue what the 77% is about, don't worry. That's why we're here. It's DW's flagship program for Africa, and it's so called because at the time of our research, 77% of the continent of Africa was made up of people under 35 years. That's me, you, and all the lovely faces you see around you. And speaking of the faces, I'll be introducing them shortly, and you'll get to find out who they are and how they're related to the 77%. But this little video might give you an example of what exactly it is we do.
Oh, hey there. Yes, I'm Edith Kimani, but forget about me. I really want to know about you.
The African story is our story told by us, as told by us.
Where do you come from?
I can't just insert myself into Africa and feel African. Oh my God, I feel African.
Why is it not happening?
How committed are we as Kenyans in different spheres?
Where is the problem with youth unemployment?
Most of these jobs are on connection basis.
What do you guys do there? What's happening? What's kicking? What's not happening?
Every single second, you have a baby being born in Africa.
Excuse me? So let's do this, guys. Let's talk to each other. Tuongeleshane manze, you, me, everybody in between, because right here is where we get to do it. Because this is a safe space, the 77%, home of Africa's youth. Yes, youth.
But everything I've told you about the 77% is all you need to know. We talk to young people all across the continent, and we like to hear from you, your topics. That's why it's so exciting for us to be launching the Instagram page. And in fact, you can check it out just now by logging on to your Instagram page. The handle is at DW_77%, actually the 77%. And you can also find us by simply typing the hashtag 77%. Now, speaking of the people that are doing incredible things, let's start with the youngest, Sylvia Adhiambo. Do you want to introduce yourself for just a little bit and tell us what Girls Off Mute is? I mean, you're so incredible. It's insane.
Okay, sure. My name is Sylvia Adhiambo. I am 15 years old. I come from a family of 4. That's me, my younger brother, and my parents. I come from Kibera. Of course, we all know Kibera is the biggest slum in Africa. So, and I'm also an aspiring journalist, and I'm representing Kenya in Girls Off Mute. Girls Off Mute is a segment under 77% program that gives young girls or youths an opportunity to build their confidence and also to speak about their issues.
That's really cool, Sylvia. And of course, one of the things that you've done for the 77% is you had a report where you went and spoke to young girls who were being affected by COVID, either by dropping out of school or not having finances to go to school. What made you come up with this idea?
I thought of that simply because, first of all, it involves girls, young girls like me. And yeah, because they are suffering a lot while they're supposed to put more effort in the education. So I thought to do that story because I also need to educate other girls so that they can be careful. Yeah.
And I also found it very interesting because you spoke to a tutor, and she is herself 19. So it's a 19-year-old teaching other teenagers. But she was able to speak so freely to you. I don't think she would have spoken the same way to me if I had gone to interview her. Why do you think that is?
I think she did that because, I am born in Kibera. I was born in Kibera, and Kibera is my home. I live in Kibera. So we are so much friendly to each other. Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. And you keep coming back to this idea of I come from Kibera, I live in Kibera. Do you think that sometimes as journalists we get it wrong about the place where you grew up from? Do we always put it in a box?
Okay. As for me, I'm really proud to come from Kibera because this is my home. And I was born here and I'm still living in Kibera. And my parents, we all live in Kibera. So I don't think it's something big because I come from Kibera. Yeah.
Okay, and by the way, for the benefit of our viewers who don't come from Kenya, Kibera is one of the biggest slums in Africa. I think it's the second biggest. The population is estimated to be anywhere between 25,000 and 250,000 people living in a very small squareage. And so, yeah, Sylvia, thank you so much for sharing your content. But, you know, why do you think it's important for people who are teenagers to be speaking on platforms like the 77%? Is there an impact? Have you been speaking to your friends? Do they say that they've watched it?
Yeah. First of all, these platforms do encourage and inspire young people a lot because it builds their confidence, and also it inspires them a lot so that, or it encourages them a lot because it gives them that eager or curiosity to do something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Sylvia. And if you have any more questions for her, by the way, just go on the chat. This is a free-for-all conversation. Everybody's voice is welcome. And Sylvia is just one of the many people who we feature on the 77%. So when we say that these stories are for you and from you, we really mean it. Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's such a pleasure to meet you. I hope I get to see you one of these days face-to-face. Yeah, which now brings me to Miss Crystal. Now, when I saw her story on the 77%, I thought this is incredible because the sorts of things you were talking about were literally mirroring what we discuss in my own home here in Kenya. The possibilities of moving to another country and making it big, because you left Ghana, emigrated to Canada, and then at some point you realized, actually, my job is literally in Ghana. That's where I belong. So introduce yourself, please, and welcome.
Thank you very much. So my name is Crystal Beko. I am a mother of three, a wife. I also do event planning. I've somehow become an influencer now since COVID started. And I mean, I'm very passionate about philanthropic work. And so I have done things with blood works. I've done things with education. I'm all about, I believe that, in Ghana anyways, poverty, well, even in Africa as a whole, poverty can end using education. So I'm very passionate about that. I haven't quite figured out exactly how yet, but I know it's going to come to pass one day. So those are one of my passions that I'm working on and focusing on. And somewhat COVID turned me a little bit away from my events, and I've become more focused in that direction as well. In which case I started homeschooling boxes called At Bisyan Box. And basically I was creating learning aids for parents to use alongside Zoom, because, it's very difficult. I have 3 kids, as I mentioned before, and it's difficult not being a teacher, and all of a sudden we're all teachers, right? So I came up with a concept and a box that was going to be able to help parents. And while I was doing that, I was like, you know what? We can do this for villages and like other less deprived or privileged areas by sending them homeschool boxes like these to learn from. So still work in progress, but that's just a little bit about me.
Okay, so we're constantly, first of all, thank you for that introduction. We're constantly here on the 77% talking about migration because, like it or not, it's been a key feature. Oh, hello, one of the children. Hi, we were just talking about you.
Say hello. Okay, and bye. Okay, hug me. Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. So one of the things we talk about quite often is, employment opportunities on the continent, particularly for young people, and also immigration. A lot of people, myself included, and Kaz as well, have lived abroad. But for people who remain, the big question is always, why would you come back? So why did you?
Well, for me, I came back. There's a lot of, first of all, sitting in Canada and with my friends, we're always like, oh, Ghana has so many issues. Africa in general, we don't do this right. We don't do that right. But then I sat there and I was like, you know what? How am I being helpful to this problem? Like, how am I contributing? It's easy for me to sit here comfortably, with my degree in my back pocket, possibly like a job lined up and everything, and say all these things about Ghana and Africa. What's really going on there? I need a base there. So that was my first step. It's like, okay, let me go back. I'm educated. What's the worst that can happen, really? So I made that jump, right? And I came to Ghana, and then I thought, if I'm able to live this experience and see what really happens here, I can actually encourage people to come down. And so, yeah, I got a job. I went into actually event planning. I was on mainstream TV. I did business news, and I also did a whole show around the same concept of what DWTV is doing. So to answer your question, yes, I mean, coming here is a difficult decision to make because, one, we've been brainwashed to think it's easier out there. And then two, it is difficult here. There are problems. There are real issues that need to be addressed. But the only way for us to do that is to bring our skill set back and to help alleviate some of these problems here. So making that move back has been one of the best decisions that I ever made. And I'm glad that I did it. And in that sense, too, I'd like to encourage everybody to make the same move. Of course, you have to plan it and you have to strategize, right? But finding the right skill set in different areas in our different industries is challenging when everybody's moving back, so it's kind of like the problem just continues and continues. But if more of us move back to our home countries, I think we can make a huge difference. Huge.
Right. And I do know that you were very quick to admit that coming back home was indeed the right decision, but it's not necessarily been easy. Can you speak to us about some of the challenges you've encountered and what the main differences in your experience as an African in the diaspora?
Well, for starters, let's look at it from like an entry-level position, because that's one of the biggest, the starting point for anyone, right? When you finish or you graduate and you want to come back and start your life, where are you gonna live? What car are you gonna drive? You want to be free off of your parents. You don't want to just go back and live with the parents and so forth. So that's a challenging thing here in Ghana, because we don't have, for instance, where in Canada you have first and last month rent and you pay, and you can just go and get a credit card and get a car, and then you pay as and when you make, here, when you have to first of all pay 2 years in advance. So imagine paying 2 years in advance for rent. Where am I going to find that money from? So I had to live with my parents, right?
How do people find 2 years?
2 years. I don't even know where you're going to steal this money from. And it's dollars, mind you. In a lot of cases, if you want a nice area and a good space, you have to pay in dollars 2 years in advance. How are you going to commute? If you're going to buy a car, well, a few banks had like chances to like do like a mortgage, just not mortgage, but like pay bits, right, in installments. But most of the time you want to buy a car here, you pay again, boom, cash. Again, how are you going to do that? So if you don't have parents who support you and you have maybe a car that they give you or gift you, you're going to be stuck with local transport, moving around, or wherever you live, it'd be really far away because your finances at the point, entry-level position, cannot afford you to get a nice place in the city center, right? So those were some of the challenges that I faced coming down. And then obviously when I started working as well, you realize that everyone around you comes from different backgrounds, right? And not everyone is as, I want to use the right terms, but not everyone is as educated as you, or has the set of skills that you have. So typical example, I'd be working in my team, because I started with journalism as well. The person next to you, even though they've graduated, they may not know how to use PowerPoint, or they may not know how to use an Excel sheet and so forth. So you find that something that can be done very easily takes a longer time to do, because maybe someone in your team doesn't completely comprehend how to go about it, So it's very challenging when it comes to that, because you think, okay, I can just quickly get this done. But no, it can take you like a full day or even a week to finish one assignment, because everyone that's supposed to help you as a team is unable to do so. So the skill set, again, it goes down back to skill set. back to upbringing, back to even down to like work ethic is completely different for so many people. So it was deep. I mean, it went deep. It went deep. I can't even begin to explain how intense. Oh, my phone is ringing. I hope, can you hear that? How do I cancel? Okay. All right. Yeah, so it goes really deep.
Okay, well, that's really interesting, and I truly hope that the 77% can continue to be a space where these sorts of discussions are had and heard, because obviously the perception between people who are living in Africa and wanting to leave and people who are living here and not wanting to leave, and so on and so forth, is diverse. So thank you very much, Crystal. Ms. Kaz Lucas, you're up next. As I said earlier, she is a 2021 TED Fellow. This woman is not to be messed with. She's also my really good friend. And she also has a segment on the 77% where she comes as our sex educator. So Kaz, you can tell us more about yourself and then we can go into a Q&A.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much, Edith, for moderating this panel. You are an excellent moderator. So I'm so glad to be a part of this panel. My name is Kaz. I live and grew up and work in Kenya at the moment for DW, for the 77%. I have a short segment called The Spread, which is actually named after a podcast that I started approximately 4 years ago. And basically the idea behind the content that we create is the umbrella concept is to create safe spaces for young people across the continent to be able to feel free enough to ask questions or to explore their sexuality in ways that outside or inside the home or inside the school are deemed taboo. So I'm creating spaces for people to be able to ask questions without getting any shame or concerns from teachers, from parents, and just like creating complete and total safety for people to be free, to be themselves, to be curious, because there's a lot of curiosity happening with us in our 20s, in our 30s, actually in our teens especially. So this is a place to ask questions and learn more about yourself and get advice on where you can go, who you can reach to if something is urgent. And it's been such a beautiful journey, and I've loved every second of working with DW. And I'm happy to be here to ask to answer any questions. The spread on the 77% is predominantly answering people's questions. So this is a really great part for us to be interactive. And I'm eager to hear if anybody has any questions that they would actually even just want answered on the show. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, that's really incredible. But then you started by saying that you're creating a space that's conducive and age appropriate. But then the reach for the 77% is obviously very large. You have somebody like Sylvia who's 15, but you also have somebody who's 32 and might be more sexually aware and mature. So how do you ensure that this is content that Sylvia's dad, for example, won't have to worry about?
Sylvia's dad? I think Sylvia's dad should be worrying. He should definitely be in on it, because a lot of the time, so the content is geared towards more age appropriate people. So it's 18 and over. So it's not necessarily for Sylvia, but it's a place where Sylvia's dad can come and learn ways in which he can have conversations with Sylvia that are age appropriate to her. So I am having conversations with parents who come and say, my daughter is this age and she's just maybe started menstruating. What are some of the things that I can do to help her, or what are some of the pages that I can point her towards so that she can learn more about cycle, or she can learn more about her reproductive health. So Sylvia's dad is welcome. Sylvia will just have to watch your show, and you are doing such an amazing job. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Truly, she is. And so, Kaz, following up on that, how do you come up with the topics of you did say that people are constantly asking you questions, but how do you make sure that it has a Pan-African feel to it? Because you're speaking to people who are in religious-dominated countries, or some people who might be more conservative than others. How do you make sure that it's got that Pan-African feel?
So I believe that even the phrase itself, Pan-Africanism, can be hindering depending on how people choose to interpret it. Conversations around sex and sexuality are taboo. So the conversation is actually open to anybody who is willing to take the step into decolonizing the way sex is thought about, because we're always taught that it's bad. We are raised knowing the term is bad manners. So like even the words around our genitals, the words around our interactions with other people are changed into something else that we don't say. So young girls aren't raised calling their vaginas, they call them something else. Whereas it would be so much more easier to have a conversation with a doctor at a young, like Sylvia's age, to go to the doctor and say that something is, this is my vagina, as opposed to saying this is my nini, which isn't really a word. So it's more about more about opening the doors to this Pan-African view and letting people know that there's things we have to unlearn in order to learn things the right way, in order to avoid certain things in our lives, so that we can get into healthier sexual practices that are a lot more consensual. So just keeping in mind that sexuality and conversations around sex are so taboo, but then honestly, if we have conversations about them at a young age, there's so much that can be disrupted. We can disrupt the system completely.
And speaking of disrupting, we have had some very uncomfortable conversations, you and I, during Street Debates, which is a section that we have on the 77%. So I'm very curious to know what the impact or what the response has been to your work, because as you say, sex in general is considered to be quite taboo as a public topic in Africa in general.
Yes. Well, the responses have been both good and bad. The pages that I have set up for my work, a lot of people are coming forward with questions and thank you for helping me in this and that. But then a lot of when I go to the DW page on Facebook and read the comments, I'm just like, I get this even threats. There's people who have threatened my life before, just saying things like, you're the reason for, there's so many things people can blame me for, being slut shamed, being shamed, there's a myriad of negativity that comes with it. But at the end of the day, as long as I keep repeating what it is, like the thing that pushes me is actually the decolonization of sexuality. So just the unlearning the way we were taught about sex in school and in church and in religious institutions, and just relearning how to have conversations about sexuality based on your body or based on people who you interact with bodies. And there's always going to be negative push, but I try to stay focused on all the positive that comes out of it.
Yay, that's really, really good to hear. So what is your dream when you cast forward to, say, the rest of this year? What are some of the expectations that you have for the spread within the 77%? And what has the 77% been able to do for you, which you weren't able to do before? Because you were doing this obviously on podcast.
Yes, so 77% has given me a visual platform, which a lot more people are more visually attuned to receiving content that way. And I'm very grateful for that. My dream at the beginning of the year was to become a TED Fellow, and now it's happened in March, and I'm like, okay, what do I do the rest of the year? But I guess I still have, there's still a lot of content to create. This year, I'm actually focusing a lot of my content around consent and around conversations around consent. So I'm really hoping to be able to bring in everything that we talk about with like a little pinch of consent salt, because just the rate at which sexual violence is happening in homes, especially during the pandemic, during lockdown, a lot of police brutality, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of violence happening in the world because of this pandemic. And so I'm hoping that those are some of the issues that we can touch on this year, just giving people advice and stories, because now people require something different, something like very particular. It's very pandemic based. And I feel like this is a good opportunity to give them the content that they want now, especially this year, looking back, having already experienced a pandemic 1 year deep, and possibly going in on another one. So I think this is an opportunity for us to be able to, whereas a year ago, we just didn't know what we were doing. Now it's just like, okay, so you've been in a pandemic. These are some healthy ways in which you can do this. These are some healthy ways you can practice this. And I hope to be able to do more of that, obviously with more conversations around consent.
And finally, Kaz, we have a question here. Why is sex education very important to you or your personal experience?
Sex education. Actually, I'm gonna talk about the reason that I got into this whole line of work to start with. It all began with just telling stories about women who had been sexually assaulted. I started a short documentary series called Kenyan Woman, and I highlighted women who had overcome different forms of sexual violence. And the more that I thought about it, it just like the conversations around rape culture need to change. Why are we constantly telling women that they need to do this, they need to do that? Whereas we're not raising boys to stand down. We're not raising boys to understand that when a woman says no, it's no. We're just like, if you look around at the conversations that you have with different women, almost every woman has been sexually harassed in one form or another. Even things like catcalling that people don't consider sexual harassment, walking in the streets and getting catcalled, that's a form of sexual harassment that has happened to almost everybody that I know. And in the office, getting jobs because you're wore a skirt that pleased the boss, or there's so many different ways in which women are getting harassed, and so many stories that we're constantly documenting. But at what point do we start to change the narrative? Like, okay, so we need to change the education system. That's where it all begins. We need to start teaching people from a young age what the definition of consent is, and for them to understand, okay, so if a kid comes and hugs you, you can say, no, I don't want to be hugged, and somebody should be able to understand that. It's really as simple as when your child, when an uncle or an aunt comes to visit you in the home and the child doesn't want to hug the aunt or uncle, don't force them. But in Kenyan homes, in African homes, we're constantly telling people, go and hug uncle so-and-so, go and hug auntie so-and-so. And that you're teaching the child that they have no agency over their body. So it's important for me to teach young people, to as young as we can, just about general consent. Don't pinch me, don't tickle me, don't force me to hug or kiss anybody. Give children their own agency. That way, when they grow up, they'll understand, oh, she has said no, that means no. And I think it's just dismantling the education system from the beginning.
Woo! I feel like clapping.
Clap.
Yeah. And I know that Crystal was also really nodding her head. I'm sure thinking about your own children. This must be very meaningful to you.
Absolutely. Like, this is so deep.
Yeah. So that's actually where I'd like to end at least the first half of this conversation. I know we have finished a little earlier than I was expecting, but we were also expecting another lady, Sheila. She's also quite young and she's doing some incredible work for the 77%. But unfortunately, she wasn't feeling too well, but we're still thinking about you and we hope you get better soon, Sheila. But thank you all so much for coming to our launch party.
Oh, hey there. Yes, I'm Edith Kimani, but forget about me. I really want to know about you.
The African story is our story told by us, as told by us.
Where do you come from?
I can't just insert myself into Africa and feel African. Oh my God, I feel African.
Why is it not happening?
How committed are we as Kenyans in different spheres?
Where is the problem with youth unemployment?
Most of these jobs are on connection basis.
What do you guys do there? What's happening? What's kicking? What's not happening?
Every single second, you have a baby being born in Africa.
Excuse me? So let's do this, guys. Let's talk to each other. Tuongeleshane manze, you, me, everybody in between, because right here is where we get to do it. Because this is a safe space, the 77%, home of Africa's youth. Yes, youth.